This.
Okay,
Yeah, I got it figured out.
got it.
Yeah, it was, I did a little test last night with Denise, so go in the other room. I'll figure this out. So I finally got it. Finally got it working.
Good deal.
So
Well, I'm just sitting here in my kitchen. I've got the rest of the room dark, so my face isn't obscured, but maybe that should go the other way around.
no, you're good. So I was gonna try to make a list of like talking points, but I totally forgot because I was so busy trying to get stuff done this
No
morning.
worries. No worries. We
Uh,
can just talk.
well, basically, a lot of people don't know who we are, so maybe just introduce yourself, Scott, and like what do you do and kind of how we
Mhm.
met, kind of thing.
Okay, well, my name is Scott Purcell. I live in Los Cabos, Mexico, and I work for Roneval Real Estate, which is the largest real estate brokerage in the state. I've been in Mexico for a total of 11 years. I will be married to a Mexican in about a month. And my whole life is here. My youngest son lives here. I met you, Rob, because of a mutual friend brought you on board to race the Baja 1000 on a rally bike with us last year.
Right?
So last year was the first year I did the entire score series, and it was a special class for Pro Moto Adventure. So take a big flying gas can that weighs 100 pounds more than a traditional race bike and go take it through these courses. And we had a great time doing it.
Yeah, and you picked the perfect bike to Ironman on.
Well, I did the first two Ironman. I did the San Felipe Ironman on that bike, and I think I finished 3 minutes before the cutoff. It
Yeah,
was brutal. It was
yeah.
brutal.
No, I can imagine, especially San Felipe. Like, it's not that you can't do it, it's just that you have a time limit, right? So it's like you got to do it in a reasonable amount of time.
Yep.
And so that means you still got to keep moving consistently. And, problems happen. So,
And
you can
there's
get
that
behind real
course,
quick.
there's no reprieve on the course. It was literally like 200 miles of whoops, 60 miles of rocks, and about 10 miles of fast stuff.
Right. Well, that's why it's always, been kind of like the black sheep of the Baja races, and most people don't
Yeah.
like to do it because it's just
Yeah.
quick, fast, brutal whoops, and it's over, and you spend a lot of money, and you're like, dang, I should just race the 1,000.
Yeah. Well, ignorance is bliss. That was my first time. So,
Yeah. Well,
uh,
it's a good
I'll,
experience.
it was, yeah. Yeah. I would do it again, but I would do it again on an enduro bike.
Right. Well, of course. I'd be dumb, and I'd probably do it on a big bike. I'm just
Yeah.
a glutton
Well,
for punishment.
although my preference really is rally racing, I really enjoy the navigation part of it, and so I've been doing the Baja Rally and the Nora Rally primarily because there's just fun races to do, and they're challenging for navigation. And I just finished the Baja 6 Day Rally, which takes place mainly centered around Catavenia. And Rob, as you know, that's an area that is really technical with a lot of trails that don't get much use and washed out and rocky and steep going up and steep going down. And
Yep.
it was 6 days of that, and it'll beat you up and test your will, but it was super fun.
Catavenia is one of my favorite places. I call it the Flintstone land. It's
Yeah.
like the land of the lost. Big punjins and all the big cactus and all that cool stuff.
Yeah, the Dr. Seuss trees.
Yeah. So, I mean, basically, so why we're having this like meeting is we both kind of hit the same like physical journey, right? Like, I've been an athlete my whole life, racing motorcycles for 40 plus years. I've done training, I've done all these things. I've gone extreme, I've gone, consistently hard. And, at a certain point, you can recover and you can get better. But for some reason, as I get older, I just felt like, I was getting stronger and I didn't have to work as hard. But then all of a sudden, I got to a point where I just wasn't functioning and
Hmm.
things were not working right. Like, and I'm not talking about just being able to go out and lift stuff up. I'm talking about physically, I felt like I was like hit by a bus like every
Yep.
day. And
Yep.
I didn't have cancer. I didn't have these things, but I had Crohn's disease, or ulcerative colitis, and stuff like that. But that's stuff that I had since I was 23 years old, and I was able to deal with it and just change things around diet wise and stuff. But this is different. This is almost like an attack to me, where I
Hmm.
was physically attacked, where I just all of a sudden felt like something happened different and something changed drastically. And if it wasn't cancer, if it wasn't, something that was very obvious, then what was it, right? And then,
Right.
I came to a point of saturation, I think. And so when I came out and raced 1,000 with you guys, um, it was a big eye opener for me because right before that, when we had talked and we were discussing whether I was going to race or not, and I'm looking at finances, and
Hmm.
I'm because Baja's cheap, and you foot most of the bill, so I was pretty grateful for that. But you know the 6 months prior to that, I was struggling pretty bad. Like getting to work was just a chore. Getting out of bed was a
Hmm.
chore. Not wanting to do anything. Not
Right.
feeling good every day. And it was became a chronic thing, like every day.
Hmm.
I mean, tendonitis, bursitis, back pain, liver pain, kidney pain. I mean, I was just in pain, and I'd have these ghost pains in my legs for no reason. It was like somebody just
Hmm.
shoved a knife in there and left it in. And so I was really sketched. Like I was like, am I going to be able to do this? And the wife's looking at me. She's like, "Are you sure you want to race ball?" And I'm like, "Well, I may never get to do it again." Like you got to keep your
Yep.
mentality square. So, I ended up, taking off and going for a week down there and getting out of my environment and getting away from home and getting on a dirt bike. And, in the past, anytime you get on a dirt bike, life seems to change, right? So it's like you feel better, you just
Yep.
get out in the environment, you get away from your norm, whether it's mental or physical, both are good, right?
Yep.
So I knew, as soon as I get on a bike, I'm like, all right, I just got to get on a bike. And sure enough, as soon as I get down there, I get on a bike, I start feeling a little better, and I was staying with my friend Justin Strong at his little ranch.
Hmm.
And it was good because I was not in town. I wasn't, around a bunch of, weird environment, food wise, things like that.
Yep.
And the lady made our food for us. So, I mean, most of the stuff was just fresh, what she made every day. And I wasn't drinking a lot of, sodas and junk while I was out there, obviously, because
Hmm.
it just wasn't easy. And I was really didn't have a lot of time.
Hmm.
So I'd come home after riding all day and just eating very little, almost in a fast position,
Hmm.
uh, fasting. And then, I'd come home and I was like too tired to really eat. So I'd only eat a little bit just to kind of get over the hump. And then I wake up in the morning and I'm like, oh, all right, I'm kind of hungry. So then I'd have a
Hmm.
pretty good breakfast and then go do the same thing all over again, right? And you
Yep.
never know when you're going to get to eat in the afternoon because sometimes it was like, hey, grab us some tacos, and you show up and
Right.
it's like, here's one taco, and it's like, dude, where's the tacos? Like, oh, well, we ate them. You're like, oh God, I'm starving. What else do you got? So I mean, I was kind of like forced to eat minimal, right?
Hmm.
And I think that really made a difference. And then, obviously we get to the race time and, I was feeling pretty good. And then, we raced and, I had to really sit on a bike for a long time.
Hmm.
We were running late and that nighttime stuff, just wore you down. And
Yes, it does.
I
Riding a
was
night
able
is
to,
stressful.
yeah. So I mean, that alone with just the trophy trucks and the whoops and everything being torn up. So, you know, in the end, I made it, got the bike there, everything was good. Um, but then after I came home, I looked at the wife, I said, "Hey, something's just different. Like something happened. I feel different overall. Why is it such a big change? Why
Hmm.
is it that I'm feeling so much better now that I'm home and I was gone for a week, just out in Baja, eating carne asada, you know, eating a
Yep.
lot less overall, not as much
Hmm.
bulk food and not as much sugar and junk. I mean, I might have had one soda here and there, but not that was about it. I didn't eat a lot of sugar. So, y- I kind of went on about another month after that. And I just started feeling kind of bad again, and I was just going, yeah, something's just not right. So I ended up, telling her, I said, hey, we got to do something drastic because this doesn't add up.
Hmm.
I know how I felt and I know how I feel. What's different? So I said, we got to just cut everything out. Let's just start with a clean slate. So pretty much we eliminated all of our food. And the first thing I did was tested my house. I made sure that I wasn't getting poisoned or some other
Hmm.
outside environmental things that were happening that was causing this. So,
Right.
I went and got radon gas tests. I got um, mold detection testers. I mean, I
Hmm.
just put stuff all around the house. I'm just like, what's going on here? And, so that all came back pretty clear. So I was like, okay, so it's not really necessarily an environmental thing that's very obvious. So
Hmm.
let's keep this focus on food. What is it we're eating? What are we touching? What's going on around us? And I just started looking at everything, and this isn't something new 100% because we already started talking this way and looking this way since COVID and all that.
Right.
But as far as like implementing it and really getting serious about it and seeing the result of something, this was the first time that I really took I guess, came out of the ditch and, and got out of the
Yep.
gutter
Yep.
and that mentality where it was like, man, I'm 1 foot in the grave, and if I don't do something, I'm not going to come back, and that's kind of how I felt.
Yep.
So,
100%.
so I
Well,
started
you
looking at, go ahead.
you touched on a lot of different things that I think are important. And one of those things, the reason why I believe you felt so much better when you were less focused on food and more focused on doing something you love is when the body is in a fed state, it's always in a growth state. And so we've been taught for most of our lives, well, you need to keep your energy levels up. So you got to keep eating, right? And
Right,
you need
right,
to eat a lot of carbohydrates. And really what that is just good marketing because the body will only heal itself when it's in a state of ketosis. And so what you did is you allowed your body to stop burning glucose for energy and switch over to burning ketones for energy. And the difference between the two, loosely explained, is like glucose is like farm diesel, whereas ketones is like what they use in an F1 car. It's
right,
just so much different in the way that it burns and how much energy is produced by the two. So giving your body time to be in ketosis allows that cellular cleanup to take place. And so if you could imagine a movie theater that never stops showing pictures one after another, eventually it would get so mucked up with gunk you couldn't even walk on the floor anymore. And that's
right.
essentially what we're doing with our bodies because we're constantly feeding it. But the other thing is that for most of our lives, and I think this really started in earnest in the 1940s because Fred Stair, who started the nutrition department at Harvard, and Ansel Keys, who was also very, very a big influence in our diet these days. They did a lot of research, and most of the research was funded by the Sugar Research Foundation. So what they ended up doing is they demonized saturated fats, and what we learn now is that the saturated fats is really getting the blame for what sugar has done this whole time. And so these things that we've been taught our whole life that are healthy, like basing our diet on carbohydrates, is death by a thousand cuts. And by the time you get to your mid 50s, you're like, what is it with all these symptoms I'm feeling? And,
Right.
and it really is because it's runaway growth in your body. And there's no time for that cellular cleanup. And uh, having that break for you, I think was really, really good. And the other topic you touched on is kind of what I would describe as an elimination diet. Just start from the basics. And a lot of doctors
Yep.
will prescribe, say, take 2 weeks or 4 weeks, take a month, and just eat meat, eggs, salt, and water, coffee, and tea. Basically, that gives your body a chance to just totally reset because there's zero carbohydrates. So you're basically burning fat and you're allowing your body time to clean up. And the other thing you mentioned was that you weren't eating much at night. And so this is important too for sleep quality and for the glymphatic system to work, which is a system that cleans out cellular debris in your brain. And that only takes place in the early stages of sleep. And it can only happen if your body's not focused on digestion. So not having any food 4 hours before you go to bed is really a good idea.
Right.
So there's a lot of topics and things in there that you talked about, and there's really good information and science that backs up what you're saying.
Well, yeah, exactly. And it's interesting since we've been talking about all this. Like, I'm kind of like the grunt guy. I'm kind of the guy that just does the work, and you're the guy that kind of has the technical side of it. So it's kind of cool because you've obviously studied the technical part of some of these things a little more than I have. Like I get it because I'm a mechanic, so I do understand how things function. And if the core isn't working, if the real core issue is the issue and you haven't looked at it, you haven't really fixed anything.
Hmm.
Because you can change all the parts you want on the outside, but if you haven't gotten the core working, the crankshaft or the main bearings or, the bottom part of the engine is not actually smoothly moving, nothing else is going to work. They all work
That's
together.
right.
So it's like you
That's
need
right.
that branch, that core.
That's right.
So it's kind of cool that, you've been studying all this. And it's just kind of funny how we like met because, I think we're in the restaurant and you started talking about, eating meat. And I'm like, yeah, yeah, yeah. That's what I've been doing. And so I was already kind of talking about doing it, but it was like,
Yeah.
I think you were a little more ahead of me on that kind of side of it. But
Well, I kind of gravitated more towards, and I hate talking about diet because it's so hyperbolic. People get
right.
really fixated on their beliefs on what they
Yeah.
eat, and for
Don't
a lot
touch
of
my
different
food.
reasons. For a lot of different reasons, because they think one part is bad, another part is good, and
Right.
really
Right.
that's not the case. And so, for not that I necessarily I like vegetables, I like fruits, but and that's not necessarily the problem. The problem is that with modern agriculture, we're growing food through chemical stimulation. The
Right.
ground is dead. We're not like a carrot nowadays has probably maybe 30 or so percent of the nutrients that it used to have when our grandparents were eating it because it was grown in regenerative soil and people grew their own food. When I was a kid, I was born, when I was born, we lived on a farm. And in the wintertime, we had a cellar full of canned foods, canned
Yeah.
beans and all kinds of fruits and all
That you
kinds of things.
made.
And so, exactly, exactly. So,
Who does that
this,
now?
this idea that, we can only go for a few days and then we have to go to a supermarket, that before 1940 or so, that was a foreign idea. There was no supermarkets before that.
Right.
And the whole implementation of modern transportation and refrigeration has made it possible for people to eat like an only vegetable diet, for example. But the problem that I see with it is that between the lack of nutrients because we're growing it in dead soil, and then the fact that where the ubiquitous use of pesticides like Roundup, which has an active ingredient called glyphosate. Well, glyphosate was originally patented as an antibiotic. And so, what do antibiotics do to bacteria in your stomach? They kill them. And so, getting to your point with, you mentioned you had digestive issues.
Mm-hmm.
Well, most of that and a lot of the symptoms in our body can be traced back to a dysbiosis in the gut microbiome that we're learning more about now. And really what happens is we end up breaking apart the tight junctions that separate the food inside of our digestive tracts from our circulation. So we're letting a lot of things out that shouldn't get out. And then it throws our immune system into this highly reactive state, and it really starts attacking its own cells because it's like it doesn't know what to do because so much is coming at it. We're getting food particles
Right.
out of our system that never were meant to be there. And you look at things like arthritis. Well, when you look at arthritic joints, they'll find things like lipopolysaccharides, which is basically kind of like shed bacteria cells, dead cells. And what happens is in the joints, you have chondrocytes and chondroblasts that are always rebuilding your tissue there. But when lipopolysaccharides get in the way, it starts to do it in peaks and valleys, and it ends
Mm-hmm.
up like sandpaper. So
Right.
the idea that we need to seal our gut is really important, and getting away from tainted food is probably the best way to do that. And so I tend to go more animal and saturated fat, some plants, but limited as to what I do, and I try to do organic as much as possible. As much as that might mean it doesn't get coated with a
Right.
chemical. So by doing that, I've been able to heal my body. I used to have, like you, I'm sure, Rob, had a lot of pains and joint pains, and I've had multiple shoulder surgeries and knee surgeries, and I was always in pain. And now that I do this, I no longer have pain. It turns out it was all related to inflammation. And so if you go on, like you were talking about, an elimination diet, basically this is an anti-inflammatory diet where you're getting rid of inflammation in your body, but not just in your body, but in your brain as well, because we're understanding more and more that psychological issues, even extreme issues like psychosis and schizophrenia, are actually relieved quite extensively through a ketogenic diet. And again, I hesitate to call it a ketogenic diet because really all we're doing is getting rid of all the junk glucose out of our system. And
Right.
honestly, we also were taught, you know, building muscle, that you've got to get glycogen stores up. You've got to carb load before athletic events.
Yeah,
When
I
really
used to
that,
do that. I used to do
yeah,
exactly that. I would starve for 3 days,
exactly.
like no carbs whatsoever, like go into total ketosis, and then I'd be starving. And then I would
Hmm.
flip that diet 180. And it's like, okay, that may have worked initially, but what did it do in the long run, in the
That's right.
long haul, right? That's the question
Yep.
mark.
And so that's where fasting can give you a lot of insight, because I will periodically do 2, 3, 4, 5 days of fasting. And what's interesting is you don't get tired when you fast.
Right.
Your brain gets clearer, your energy levels go up. There's a guy, and his name is Andy McDonald. He's either in New Zealand or in Australia, one of the two. But to prove a point about fasting and burning fat, he ran 5 marathons in a row in 5 days, all while fasted, not eating anything, and he completed all of the marathons.
Wow.
He's not a competitive to the level where he was looking at winning, but
He
he
finished five
did
marathons.
five marathons in a row, all fasted.
Most people can't
And
do one.
exactly. Well, the interesting thing I learned about that is our body can store somewhere around 2,000 calories worth of um, energy on our muscles with carbohydrates. So, but if we are fat adapted and we're burning ketones, we have access to somewhere around 100,000 calories, give or take. So the difference between glycogen in the muscles being used up and then the body has to take sugar and convert it into glycogen again, it's slower than the conversion of fats into glycogen. And so
Well, and
we have a lot more access to energy when we're fasted.
right. So like in that thought, I just had one. So, where they say it's like he's got plenty of fat to burn, so he'll be okay. He won't die.
It's
You
true.
know? So the
Yeah.
question is, but I think what happens is I think that conversion when you're burning all that fat, or let's say you're burning all that energy in your muscle, right? And you have all that, in your blood, all that random access in your blood. And it
Mhm.
uses that for like right now, right? It like needs
That's
it right
right.
now. So that's the Snicker bar. I need a Snicker bar. I need that quick energy burst. Well,
Yeah.
then what happens after that Snicker bar is gone? What happens after that initial burst
Yeah.
of sugar has been depleted out of your bloodstream?
Right.
That's the question mark of what really happens because
Well, so
then
what?
then you crash, right?
Well,
And
that's
it's
what
like,
happens. You go up and down these terrible cycles, and what happens is when you spike your, if there's more than about a teaspoon of sugar in your glucose in your blood at any time, the pancreas will release insulin to deal with that sugar, and the insulin tries to take the sugar. Well, it takes the sugar out of the bloodstream and gives it to the liver to convert to fat for storage. and some to the cells to use as energy. But what happens is we're constantly in this cycle, like you mentioned, the Snicker bar. I got to eat something because my energy's low, and you're constantly doing that. We're constantly spiking your insulin, and it's like if you can imagine a salesman coming to your door every single day trying to sell you the same vacuum cleaner. Eventually, you're going to stop opening the door and listening to the guy, and that's what our cells are doing with insulin because insulin is. It's like when you use too much of anything, you become less
Resistant.
prone.
Yeah.
Yeah, you become more resistant to it. So the problem with that is when insulin is present, when small amounts of insulin are present in the blood, your fat cells are exquisitely sensitive to it. So it literally blocks the burning of fat. So when you go to the gym and you're downing an electrolyte drink that's full of sugar, you are completely blocking the burning of fat. And so exercising is great. If you could put exercise as a pill, it would be better than any prescription pill that's ever been made. But it's also important to know is you cannot lose fat by exercise. You have to be in ketosis and in a fat burning state to lose weight. And when we say lose weight, we mean lose fat. And
Right.
so, and that's what the lipids in our blood do, the cholesterol, if you will. They take one of their jobs is to take fats and distribute that throughout the body to be used as energy. But the interesting thing about fats is the fats don't need a special receptor to get into the cell like sugar does. So the fats just go straight in. So there's no chance that we're ever going to become resistant to burning fat, whereas we do become resistant to insulin, which is what opens the door to allow glucose into the cell.
Right. Well, and that's also probably why I lost 7 pounds in 1 week, right?
Yep. Yep. Yeah, you're
They're
amazed
trying
amazed
to
how
cut
much
my
you
meeting
lose.
off
Yeah.
here early, so I'm gonna have to. We may have to do 2 meetings.
That's okay. We can do that. We,
Anyway,
we,
this
we
is
can we can end part one here and start part two.
it's yeah, it's gonna end in 10 minutes. I'm doing the free version for now just to see if we can
Yep,
get this
no
thing going.
problem.
But
Well,
yeah, it's yeah, in closing, I mean, I basically the reason we're having this conversation is because we both kind of I've just got people that are asking me what's going on, so
mhm,
it's like and you've obviously got some other things going on, in your life and work wise and some other things coming up that this health stuff also kind of aligns with what you're doing.
mhm,
But, you know, it's just about we don't know what's going to go on here. It's like basically I'm
yep.
just telling people what I'm doing
Yep. And
and
Rob, I
getting the
think
word
I
out.
think you and I have the same priorities. And my experience was with my parents. My mom died after having Alzheimer's for 2 years. My father had congestive heart failure, and the last 10 years of his life were really not great. And I don't want to put that kind of burden on my kids. And quite frankly, I don't want to put myself through it. And I was fortunate enough to have friends who put me in the right direction. And with my incessant curiosity, I went down all these rabbit holes and I started learning. And really, it's quite simple. And that is really just to tune out all the nonsense and do what you really is easy to understand is right for your body.
Right, right. I call it noise. It's
Yep,
whether
it
it's
is noise.
just
Yeah.
noise in politics or noise in everything. It's like
Yep.
you just got to get rid of the noise and just
Well,
get that
that's
main focus of what's going on right now.
that's what's great about living down here in Mexico is that I
Hmm.
don't have a subscription to a news channel or TV. I don't follow it very much. And so having that out of my life and having people that I shouldn't be listening to anyway telling me what's best for me is probably not a good
Right,
idea. Yeah,
right. Well, let's definitely talk more about this. I think
we
I'm
should.
I'm trying to start this whole podcast thing basically just directing it towards the health side of things because
Hmm.
I mean at our age, I'm 60 and you're 57, I think
58. I just
58.
turned
So it's
58. Yeah.
so it's like this is a critical turning point. Like, we're supposed to live 120 years. Our bodies are
Yep.
designed to live that long.
That's right. That's right.
And people are dying at 50, and everybody's like, oh, you made it past the critical zone. It's like, what are you
Yeah.
talking about? The critical
Yeah.
zone. Yeah, oh, you didn't have a heart attack, so your chances are pretty good. You're going to live a little longer. and then you get past 60 and you okay, you're kind of sailing, you're doing okay, but you may not get around very well. And I'm like,
Yeah.
dude, I feel better than I've ever felt in my life, in the last 20 years. I mean,
Yep.
I
Me
think
too.
I feel like I can do 10 times more, and I'm looking forward to going, okay, what's next now? What
Yep.
challenges can I achieve? And who
Yep.
has that mentality at 60? They usually go like, oh man, you better not ride a dirt bike and, don't get hurt,
Exactly. Yeah.
and I'm just thinking about quitting my job or something, and I'm like, because I'm just burnt out, I'm like, I'm just going to quit my job and focus on what I'm doing and just keep the faith and just
Well,
push that direction.
well, doing what you love and being surrounded by people you love is the cornerstone of any good life, and having health to go along with that is, just makes it complete. And so,
Right.
you're blessed with a great family, and so you've got that part, and I am too. And so we have a lot to live for and a lot to be thankful for and a lot to be healthy for.
And a lot of racing to do. So the thousands
Yes.
coming up.
Yeah, well, I can't do it this year because I'm getting married on November
Yeah.
22nd, so
Yeah. Well,
wouldn't be good to hobble up to the altar with a broken bone.
you got to check your priorities, dude.
Yeah, next year though. Next year, Ironman start and finish in Cabo.
Yeah. I've been thinking about it too. I've been thinking about doing the whole series, but the finance part is the tough part. It
It's
takes a
not
lot,
easy. It takes a
and if I
lot.
did Ironman it, I would do it in the pro class. I would not do
Good
it
for
in the
you.
I would just start
Wow.
all in the pro class and just start out front and just hammer it,
Well, lately there's only been three in the pro class because you could easily finish fourth.
right? Or third, somebody
Or
falls
third,
out.
yeah, before they run out of gas,
Yeah, or they crash,
or they
you know.
crash. Yeah, God
Yeah.
forbid. Rob, it's great
All right.
catching up with you, man.
Yeah, we'll talk more. We'll have part two of this because there's more questions. And then of
Looking
course,
forward
I'd
to
like
it.
to ask, more about your story and how you got into, getting to the healthy side. And there's some other things I'd like us to talk about as far as, you know, um, toxicity, things like that, things
Yep,
that have
yep,
caused some of these things to be even more compounded,
that's
you
right.
know, and that's part of why it's getting worse as we get older, is because
Yep,
we're getting this teeter-totter compounding thing of our bodies aren't able to keep up. And it's not that we're getting older, it's that we're become so toxic that now our systems aren't able to actually filter that and work through that to do their normal job. So,
that's right. And that's back to the point of having a period of time when you're fasted, because that's when your body cleans up. And
right.
so if we're not able to clean up, we're not getting rid of the junk that we
So
take in that
that's
we
your
shouldn't have.
detox that
Yep.
people are trying to sell you something for. And it really comes down to
Yeah,
your body is the best detox machine there is because it's already got a
it
built-in
is.
vacuum cleaner.
There's some great natural things that help to boost that system, like a tamarind is one of them.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, there are natural things. So the way I look at food is I look at uh, proteins are food, fats are energy, and plants are medicine.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it.
Yep.
Right on. Okay. Well, this has been a good conversation. We'll definitely
Enjoyed
keep
it.
going with this.
There's a
And
lot more
I'll get
rabbit
this.
holes to go down.
I know. But we want to keep it simple,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
kiss, keep it simple, stupid. That's really what's important, right? Other people, otherwise people lose the grasp of it, and
Mhm.
they'll get disappointed or this is too hard. There's too much. It's like, I made it real quick. I made a meal plan for one of the racers here, and he goes, "That's it?" I'm like, "Yeah, dude.
Is that the one that you showed me? Because it
Yeah,
looked like a
yeah.
prescription for diabetes.
I know." I was like, "Dude, what is all this stuff? Just get rid of everything. You don't need any of that. Just go to
Yep.
like the animal side, man. You're an athlete.
Yep.
You need like protein, bro. And then natural
Protein and
protein.
fats.
Yeah, and
Lots
lots
of
of
fats.
fats and
Yeah.
stop trying to avoid the fats. And I was like, dude, you're gonna find out you're gonna be using way less food
Well,
and more dense.
we could have an entire conversation just on fats and proteins.
Right, right. Yeah. Well, let's do that. Okay.
All right.
So
Cheers,
anyway,
Rob.
good convo.
Thanks.
See you, man.